What if I told you that our world was not the only one occupied with intelligent life? That there are worlds beyond our reach, in areas of creation far beyond our most advanced technology's ability to see? What if I told you these other realms included none other than the spirits of our fallen, beings we have come to know as extraterrestrials, and quite possibly the very life force of our own fictional creations, given birth and purpose beyond our reach? It is a concept many have pondered for quite some time. This latest investigation, I went looking for proof of the multiverse. What sort of proof, you may wonder? Well, because of the limitations of our modern technology and the advanced nature of the beings that continually visit us, making trips beyond our imagination as common as simple as your weekly run to the grocery store. I am talking about the hunt for infinite Earths. And what other way to prove their existence than to make contact with one of them? My name is Dakota Frandsen. I am the specialist of the strange. And for the past few weeks I have been conducting an experiment, trying to gather volunteers just like you to help me analyze my findings. This case has taken on a life of its own. And the very beings that we are trying to reach have been doing their best to return the favor. I can say that with confidence. So for today's episode of Specialist of the Strange Radio Show, I present to you the hunt for infinite Earth. I will take you through the concepts in which brought upon this experiment, the inspiration for its conception, the progress of the result test done so far, and the goal. You may be surprised if you haven't been paying attention to any of my social media feeds as to who I have been reaching out to. More experiments will be done soon enough, but the first has so far created the weirdest case I have ever taken a part of. Strap in, sit back, and listen carefully, because this is one case you are not going to want to miss. I said bring it!
Hey everyone, Dakota Frandsen here, specialist of the strange. I just wanted to come with you real quick about potentially doing your own podcast. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? Maybe you got a lot of questions like, how do I record? How do I get my show into all these apps that are out there? How can I make money? There are probably several thousand other questions about getting this show off the ground that you have been formulating and communicating in your mind. And I'm here to tell you that there is a very simple answer to this. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your show. And best of all, it is 100% free. Get all the perks from the other guys without having to pay for subscription fees. And best of all, it is easy. And in fact, Anchor can match you up with sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast right now, which means you can get paid doing what you love. Isn't that the fucking dream, my friends? In fact, that's actually what I'm trying to do right now by reading this ad for you. It is amazing. It helps ease the process for guests, putting on music, whatever you want to do. So if you want to start your podcast, make some money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and several other fabulous people already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. And I cannot wait to hear you on the air.
Why did I do the voice? Well, seemed like an appropriate intro for this type of subject, and I just can do voices. It's one of my talents. So what's the point behind this case? Well, due to my filtering system, a lot of local cases are immediately disqualified from my consideration due to the fact of criminal activity, drugs, and my willingness to cooperate with law enforcement. Hell, law enforcement have actually been one of my first fans, have been watching my shit for years. And that's only because I have family in the local law enforcement agencies here in Idaho. And many of them have been known to watch Coast to Coast AM while on the midnight shift. So the hunt for infinite Earths. Why would I want to research this? Why would I want to try to lure someone out? Honestly, just to see if I can. The possibility of a multiverse, parallel realities, so on and so forth, has been around since Schrodinger pitched the idea with the Schrodinger's cat experiment. Basically, what he was saying is that with this experiment, where if you put a cat in a box with a radioactive sample and seal up the box, it's not going to be until you open it that you realize the cat is either dead or alive. Basically, what Schrodinger was saying was that both possibilities existed until you opened the box and observed what happened. Now, the actual term of multiverse didn't pop up until a few years later in science fiction works. And of course, this is quite a confusing topic. Several of the world's greatest minds have a hard time even processing the implications of it. In fact, there's a few that argue that it may not even exist, and there's a few that point out that this is essentially a theory that incorporates all possible outcomes. And that due to the fact that it's so complex and is so hard to test, let's just flat out say it's hard to test, almost near impossible to test at that. There's mathematical equations that point to the possibility, but as far as getting physical evidence, that's damn near impossible. Unless we were successfully able to establish contact with another world and convince someone from that other world to come here. That was the basis for this experiment. Why? I'll tell you. If you've listened to previous episodes, you know that a lot of the theories out there involving spirits, UFOs, angels, demons, what have you, that they may in fact be influenced by how should I put this? These events may be possible due to situations not unlike from Thor the Dark World, where you can see portals opening up to all the 9 realms. There was like a grand alignment going on. It's a situation not unlike that, actually. Basically, think of it as what's another visual I can use? Think of it as 2 little kids running perpendicular, not really paying attention to what's going on around them, and not realizing that there's another kid there until they crash into one another. That's essentially what's going on. We're aware that there's other things in the world, but we're not really paying attention. We can maybe not be able to pay attention. And that's part of the issue. So once again, unless we find someone else to come to our world, we're going to have a hard time proving it on our own. And that seems to be the case of what's going on with a lot of UFO sightings. In fact, there are old reports designated by the FBI and other government agencies that come to the same conclusions that the extraterrestrials that on those craft aren't coming from other worlds like visitors from Mars. They are coming from other planets that exist in completely different planes of reality that we cannot physically sense. We may be able to develop some sort of radar to pick up when those anomalies take place, but except for that, we have no clue where they're at. And a lot of times, if you follow this show enough, the events that take place are so goddamn rare on their own. In fact, if you wanted to slap a number on it, it's less than 1% of 1% chance of it happening without some sort of catalyst. Fuck, let's just slap the label of magic on it. Without some sort of catalyst, these things are so rare, it is quite unlikely that we would ever experience it. Yet, these things are happening often, and they seem to be happening more as of late. So what the hell's going on? How can we possibly establish what is going on? In fact, there is
rumors in conspiracy circles saying that there's going to be a grand reveal here in the next couple of years. There might even be a false flag event, an event used in order to boost up morale for exploration and possible war by intelligence communities involving an extraterrestrial invasion. That's the latest bit. That the grand reveal that extraterrestrials are going to be coming to Earth are a lot like what happened in the Avengers. It didn't become public knowledge until somebody came fucking knocking on our door and shooting us down. Which, all things considered, it might likely be a fight that we're going to lose. In fact, the reports I mentioned from the FBI actually state that those beings on those ships aren't here to harm us. But if we try to attack them, we will lose. Now, this was back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, so there could easily be technology they have access to that they have not presented within public eye. And one of the conspiracies out there is that the government takes advantage of contractors in order to help secure information out of the Freedom of Information Act. It's their loophole because it's not, once it becomes a private institution's property, it becomes subject to their policies. So essentially it may have just been an accidental loophole. Somebody went, we could do it this way. Because I'll be, honestly, if you look at a lot of how governmental work nowadays, there's a shit ton of loopholes they're jumping through. And they ought to know. They're the ones that have to deal with them all day. So what was my plan for the hunt for infinite Earths? My plan was to establish some sort of way to reach out and contact individuals allegedly from other worlds. I have a few names, but one in particular came to mind because he's essentially supposed to be a fictional character, yet his own writers, and a few other people as well, swear that they have met him in person. And if you happen to be a fan of the DC universe, DC Comics and all that, you might get a kick out of this. The person I'm talking about is none other than John Constantine. You heard me right before the break. Apparently, the Hellblazer, known as John Constantine, portrayed by Keanu Reeves and Matt Ryan, may in fact be a real dude. Now, some of you who know the background behind Constantine know that his appearance was actually based off of the singer Sting. So, some of you may wonder, how do they know it's John when it could easily be just some dumbass lookalike who's screwing with people? And the latter is not exactly outside the realm of possibility, because Sting himself has actually gotten dressed up as John Constantine to help with promotional material, especially with the recent anniversary edition of some of his earliest releases. But that's not what this show's about. I'm talking about the fact that this motherfucker is apparently real and visiting our world. When asked about it, writer Jamie Delano has actually stated in several interviews that Constantine may have come from a realm of imagination.
A term often used to describe certain things like this, that's thrown around by several people, is known as tulpas, thought forms, egregores. If I'm saying that right, I'm probably not. Essentially, the thought is that John Constantine is merely a byproduct. His appearances are merely a byproduct of latent psychic abilities within one or many of his writers coming together and subconsciously creating a physical form. And it's not the first time this has happened, too. There are other writers, within science fiction nonetheless, who swear that they have seen the characters they've created in real life. They've seen events they've wrote about in real life happen before their very eyes. There was a guy who was an artist for Planet of the Apes comics who depicted a gorilla breaking into a house and holding a woman hostage at gunpoint, only to within the hour hear his wife in the other room of his house screaming for him because a large man had broken into the house holding her at gunpoint. That's why I wanted to look into John Constantine as a possible visitor from another Earth. Because even though it's kind of joked about, when you talk about superstring theory and the literal infinite possibilities, the worlds we are familiar with within pop culture, Avengers, Justice League, hell, even fucking Paw Patrol, at this rate, they all could be real. So I wanted to establish an experiment to reach out to beings from these other worlds. I wanted to try to reach out to John Constantine. And because if you look on my YouTube channel and look for the playlist, The Hunt for Infinite Earths, you can actually listen to the results of several audio experiments, which, even though faint, and will likely require some very good headphones for you to be able to hear it, something responded when calling to John Constantine. Something responded. So I'm going to extend, therefore I'm extending the progress, which is why you're seeing this podcast episode. I'm extending the experiment to reach out to other entities. And you may wonder how this is all possible, which I'm going to go to here in a second. I want to try reaching out. Fuck it, let's try to reach out to Doctor Strange from Marvel Comics. Let's try to reach out to Valiant Thor, an extraterrestrial who had been integrated and involved with the U.S. government, supposedly from Venus. Let's try to reach out to gods from other religions. Zeus, Thor, and I'm talking the god of thunder from Norse mythology. Odin, Zeus, Hercules, Athena. Let's reach out to the names of extraterrestrials who have made themselves known in conspiracy circles. And I'm talking Ashtar, of the alleged Ashtar Command. Granted, it sounds like some sort of freaky Star Trek knockoff, but allegedly Ashtar and the Ashtar Command intercepted and caused a television broadcast, trying to warn the population of the world, of our world, of the use of nuclear weapons. And the interference of extraterrestrials around nuclear projects is well documented. To where even technical failures. Some have even speculated that the reason why they're fucking with it is because we're fucking with something in their world while we're trying to blow ourselves up. And they're trying to stop that. So I want to try to reach out to all of them. Hell, let's reach out and summon the devil himself. Because if I can reach out to fucking John Constantine, if I could reach out to everyone else I'm named off on that list, we should be able to get to the devil with no problem. Now, how does this work? What is the concept behind this experiment? Well, some of you may know that I have a seance ritual that I provide a tutorial to on my YouTube channel. It's titled Safely Communicate with Spirits. It's essentially walking through the step of a process I often use that has a roughly 93% success rate in reaching out to someone. I've even recommended it to clients of mine who had recently lost a loved one, to reach out to the loved ones they lost so they can have one last goodbye, maybe reach some closure. Yes, that is a dangerous aspect, but this process also integrates safety measures to prevent any hostile, negative forces from intercepting it. And so far it's worked without incident. Now, there could be a one-time off situation, and if that happens, I'll take care of it. But until it does, I see no reason not to hold this information. So utilizing this experiment essentially takes on a spiritual alternative to satellite communication. Basically, the idea is to ask a being from a higher dimension to help me reach out to a person from a parallel world. Now, how does this work? Alright. When it comes to superstring theory, essentially, the idea is all matter of the universe can be measured in dimensions, in strings. The first dimension is a simple line. We have a two-dimensional space, which is a square, then a cube for three-dimensional. Our world has three spatial dimensions and one dimension of time, but the time dimension is not necessarily one we need to focus on right now. In order to best explain how the fourth dimension would observe a three-dimensional world. Imagine our world for a sec. Imagine the mountains, the deserts, the deep oceans, every bit of the world. Now, picture an ant farm, sitting in the middle of a room. Nothing else in this room except for this ant farm. You walk into the room, you can see everything that's going on within the ant farm, right? Four-dimensional beings can see everything that's going on in our three-dimensional world. They can even see inside our bodies without having to cut us open. I apologize for the interruption. Now imagine the walls of this room are nothing but glass. And you go out to a larger room with nothing but glass walls, and so on and so on. That is essentially how the dimensions work. Anybody can go into one of these rooms. Let's say you can go into the room with the ant farm, watch everything that's going on. You can go into the next room outside of that. You can see everything that's going on in those rooms. But imagine the glass is like that one-way windows, like you see with police interrogation rooms. That one-way glass. It's like the people on the outside of the room can see you, but you can't necessarily see them. That's how it goes. Essentially, the experiment I'm proposing is one of those ants reaching out and saying, hey, I see that, okay, there's another ant farm over there. I know it's there. I can't see it very well, but I know it's there. Can you help me deliver a message to there? Because in a four-dimensional space has to be made of several three-dimensional spaces. Which means that the fourth dimension is linked to multiple universes like ourselves. To multiple worlds just like our own. That's the premise of this experiment. And they say extraterrestrials are like ants from another ant farm. Could be a completely different species. They kind of look like us, but they're a completely different species. There may even be other ant farms with the same ass species as ours. So again, like I said, imagine it's one of those ants saying, "Hey, I want to talk to those people. Can you help me?" And of course, the beings on the outside of the room are curious, like, wait a sec, they're not supposed to see me. Let's see what happens. Then that's how that works. The travel between these dimensions would be essentially like the ants managing to escape, or maybe you somehow manage to get flying ants in your ant farm, I don't know. But essentially the ants making their way from one ant farm to another. From that world to this world. Now maybe these higher dimensional beings might be able to pick me up and drop me off in the other world. That's a possibility. And allegedly, people who have experimented with this enter a trance-like zombie state where they go about their regular daily routines, completely, almost brain dead. No one would be any the wiser. That's why we have situations like dream walking, which is like another experiment altogether. So with these experiments, it essentially acts like a satellite. So you're wanting to send one message from America to Europe. You send the information on your computer, blah, 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 goes up to the satellite, then beams down to Europe. Simplest way to put it. Now, is this going to be perfect? No. If you look at some of the results that I've brought, the results are faint at best. Requires a bit of editing in order to hear them clearly. In fact, in order to actually hear everything that I marked in the videos, I had to listen to it increase the volume. I had to use a software in order to boost the volume, to clear up some of the static a little bit, in order to hear anything. But the weird part is, with Constantine, someone left me a message on my phone. With Constantine, after the third one actually. Second one I published because the first one literally resulted in nothing. I did the second one. The second one, there's a bit of audio where it sounds like someone is trying to stop John from launching some sort of attack against me because he thinks I'm sort of threat. The third experiment, the second one I published, a woman starts coming through clearly in the place of John. And after that experiment was done, I went to bed. I have a sleep talking recorder set up because I do have an issue with sleep talking, sleepwalking when I'm stressed out, and there's been some personal family issues which are going to be the basis for the next episode going on at the moment right now that have been stressing me out to the point my skin starts breaking out in hives. But nevertheless, something left a message. And now you may be saying, Dakota, how do you know it wasn't just you doing voices in your sleep? We know you can do voices. The issue is, I was not using any sort of white noise whatsoever to help me sleep. probably should have, because there have been several nights where I don't actually remember going to sleep. Essentially, my my sleep deprivation outweighed my discomfort, and I'll get maybe 2 hours max. A lot like what happens when I'm traveling. But anyway. Now, there's the usual suspects on this recording. Areas where you hear me mumbling in my sleep, you hear me rolling around in my bed, maybe you even hear the cats walking nearby. Usual noises, right? Then all of a sudden, a few hours in, all of a sudden there's this white noise coming out of nowhere, and this woman's voice, what sounds like an older woman's voice at that, saying, "If you can hear me, Constantine wants you." And it's one of the clearest recordings I've gotten out of this entire fucking thing. So I may try to use that sleep recording app in one of these audio experiments just to see what happens. But essentially, the static came out of nowhere. Yeah, I had plenty of electronics that could easily stir up the noise. Don't get me wrong, but I did not turn it on. Something turned it on so that they can leave that message for me, saying Constantine wants me. And there's one more audio clip that I have yet to really go through, because I've just been busy. That I've done afterwards, where I confront it and even ask if other characters from DC Comics are real. In fact, I think they actually got Zatanna Zatara, of all people, to respond, which means the fucking Justice League Dark is real. But some of you who have heard of this experiment have asked me why I decided to do it. Well, first explanation is to see if I can. 2, because if fictional characters like John Constantine are real, and all these extraterrestrial sightings are due to the fact of other planes of existence interacting with our own, what does that say about God? The one above all, the high presence, the Yahweh, Allah, the highest being there is. What does that say about him? Because some of you who have followed my show for a while now know that I've been proposing a theory that it is possible that angels and demons may actually be able to visit more than one world, because their world is connected to all these worlds, and that falls under the ideas of superstring theory. How can I test this? Well, there's no way to test it. I actually read an article when I was doing a little bit of research in order to back this basic scientific principles behind this thought experiment, that states that there is one scientist in particular who's trying to propose the idea that life could be sustained within a two-dimensional space, the flat surface. Essentially, life could live on a piece of paper, on a world, on a universe that's essentially just a piece of paper. So once again, what does that say about us? What does that say about our existence? If we can actually create other worlds, what does that say about God? About our own creation? Someone I've actually talked to brought out an interesting idea. It's like, what if the concept of God in our creation is nothing more than a self-sustaining mechanism? What if there was a supreme being that created us first, but as we became more evolved and the dimensions of the multiverse developed and taken on consciousness, we each have a sliver of godlike ability, the godlike ability of creation itself within us, that we tap into frequently in order to create the idea of what we know as God, what we know as the universe around us. Again, these theories are almost impossible to test in mainstream scientific methods. But it brings out a philosophical argument. Are we what does the spontaneous creation of life from thought, say about the creation of ourselves? Because evolution is very real. There's no question of that, because if something is going to survive, it's going to have to change in order to adapt. Change is inevitable. Change happens all the time. If we don't change, we don't adapt, we die. And if you were to create something, whether it be a computer program, you would want it to be able, a country, a person, you would want it to be able to adapt to whatever situations might come its way that you maybe didn't think to prepare for in the first place. Or, and what I think is a strong possibility, what if the being we know as God simply created us just to see what would happen? It wanted to see if it could. Once it did, it wanted to see what would happen if you left it alone. Wanted to see if we could handle ourselves. Maybe God wants us to take care of our own, and that's why we have present that ultimate question. If God exists, why does He let this happen? Why does He let that happen? It's because He wants us to stop clinging to Him like a needy child is clinging and throwing a temper tantrum to a parent that gives in way too much. What if that's the case altogether? And for those of you who present the idea, we are nothing, we are all children of God. Well, if you yourselves are parents, you should know better than most that kids have a nasty tendency of becoming just like their parents without any intervention. You could adopt a child, not know anything about its birth parents until later in life, only to discover that several of that child's quirks actually were genetically inherited. Maybe you have a child that has an advanced natural talent when it comes to creative arts, only to find out that their parents were actually artists themselves. What I'm saying with all these analogies is that there are so many factors that go into this. So we don't know what's going on. But that shouldn't stop us from trying, because once we master these things, we could possibly solve the age-old questions of what is God? What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Why are we placed on this planet? Why are we placed here? Maybe we're overthinking it and it's just a big chaotic mess, and things just happen just because things were set in motion long ago. And the consequences of our life, the things we go through, are merely byproducts of circumstances that were placed into action years and years and years ago. And there's actually a saying that comes to mind that I heard in a Criminal Minds episode, but I can't remember it exactly for now. But it goes to prove my point. So many factors brought into our existence. What if all possible factors out there that we can think of are maybe never even considered in the first place? are happening all simultaneously, like Edward Schrödinger was trying to propose when this first idea came out. And what if, because of how it all links up, because of how we can grow, become more intelligent, and manipulate our surroundings, we can reach out to areas that we thought once were non-existent and make completely new discoveries that help us understand our world better, as well as the world of thousands of more. It's a fascinating concept, and one that brings into a lot more questions that cannot be answered unless experiments like this one I am proposing work. And yes, some of you who have followed my social media feeds may be familiar with may have already picked up on the fact that this experiment was essentially named after the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event on the CW. No, I don't have any affiliation with Warner Brothers, though hint hint, Warner Brothers, I wouldn't say no, depending on the project. I don't have any affiliation with DC Comics, but it's still an appropriate situation. Because what if there is some grand threat that can take us all out? Would we have to unite with beings and people from other dimensions, other Earths, in order to fight back? What does all that mean for the infinite possibilities that the future could hold? I have a few more final thoughts after this last commercial break. Some of you may be wondering why I wanted to look into Constantine specifically. And why, instead of trying to create thought forms, look into that, twisted as someone from another Earth. Well, with Constantine, it's the fact that he was able to seemingly disappear the second he realized that someone spotted him and knew who he was. Could just be a crafty escape artist. But they're not the only ones out there that have had things come to life that they wrote about. I've had that happen too. In fact, you can actually get the books that I wrote all this down in on Amazon right now. My original novel series, The One and Two Walk All Worlds, I've had things come to life from those books. In fact, one of which is a beautiful woman who and I'm not just saying this because this episode is conveniently releasing on Valentine's Day. One is a young woman who changed my life, changed me for the better, and I hope to one day marry and spend the rest of my life with. I don't know if she listens to this, but if you're hearing it, Moonlight, that's never changed. Now, as far as for the Infinite Earths, we'll carry this experiment for as long as we can. May take breaks from it from time to time, move on to other projects, but that's just natural. Now you also may be wondering what I plan on doing with this information. If these experiments do in fact work and the beings that I'm reaching out to actually respond, what then? Well, it's hard to say. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. And yes, I mentioned I did say responding to the literal devil But in the face of the potential danger I'm putting myself in order to put this forward, and it's not for some dumb internet views. In the face of all the possibilities, the unknown is what excites me about it. So we'll see what happens. And that's all I have to say in regards to the hunt for infinite Earths. Be sure to keep watching my YouTube channel for more videos from this project. There's no doubt going to be a lot more. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're listening through YouTube, so you can get all the updates on whenever new videos drop. Episodes of this radio show are uploaded weekly, but there might be more that get uploaded at surprise times. So we try to make sure there's a little bit of something for everybody here. Be sure to catch next week's episode where we're going to step aside from the paranormal and deal with abusive situations. Why do I want to go into this? Because yes, if you go into paranormal investigation, there is a high probability you will face a client who is dealing with paranormal activity because they are being abused or being the abuser in the home. We're going to talk about what to look for, the signs behind it, and how to stop it if you're ever confronted with it. It's a subject I am covering in my upcoming book, The Fransonian Investigation into Supernatural Handbook, which doesn't have an official release date yet because it's still under work. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I want to hear what your thoughts on it are. If you have an idea for future episode topics, don't be afraid to let me know. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Reddit, everywhere. There should be a link in the description that'll take you to all the spots you need to know. You can also check out my Spoon account for occasional musical concerts. Yeah! Well, that's all I have for today. Much love for you all. Thank you for coming along with me on this journey. There's a lot coming up. If you're just joining, welcome. If you've been here for a while, how's things going? Much love for all of you. And be sure to, if you think you know anybody that'll enjoy some of this content, let them know. Send them links. Send them some merchandise. Everybody is welcome here, so long as they're respectful and don't cause problems. I think that's a fair conditions, if I do say so myself. Anyway, I'll stop blabbering. Be kind to one another. Be open to exploration. You never know what's out there. You never know what other people are going through. A small act of kindness may just save someone's life. I'll see you next time. Later.